Back when the Xuan Yuan world first kicked off, things were a total mess, with nothing but giant beasts and hardly any resources. They called it the Desolate Era. Everywhere you looked, you'd see these colossal creatures, whether in the skies or the seas of the planet. But after countless disasters, the gods and demons bit the dust, and that kicked off an age of cultivation. However, the greedy cultivators started stealing plants and hunting down the demon race. To get their hands on valuable resources, they wouldn't think twice before starting a war against mystical beings. And if they couldn't get what they wanted, they'd just destroy everything so no one else could have it either. This led to a new age of desolation, where resources ran out and insects popped up like weeds. And it's in this world that our story begins, in a place filled with some seriously strange-looking plants. There, we can see a giant carnivorous plant that seems to be drooling a lot for some reason. A moment later, the plant creature spits out our protagonist, who face plants right into the ground. The guy smashes into the soil hard, creating a small crater from the impact. This is Tian Yuan, a disciple of the Zai insect, and he's complaining that he just wanted to pollinate the flower. Seeing it's a lost cause, the young man decides to let it go and try again when it's in a better mood. Just then, the slime-covered kid hears a voice calling him from a distance, letting him know dinner's ready. The voice belongs to He Yin, a fellow disciple who brought him food, because he needs strength to work. The girl hurries him to eat, and he runs towards her, saying he's on his way. Sitting at the table, the girl reveals she prepared his favorite dish, chicken with durian jelly. But before they eat, the young woman grabs a cloth to clean the protagonist's face, which was all dirty. So, the guy thanks her for the food, and the two get ready to finally chow down. The protagonist then starts explaining that he's just a simple servant gardener for the sect. In his past life, the guy had leg problems and could only spend his days tending to plants. Even though his body couldn't move, he dreamed of being a cultivator and traveling through various realms. But all that changed the day the young man was listening to the radio and a truck crashed into his house. So, when he opened his eyes again, the kid was in the world he'd always dreamed of living in. In other words, he finally had the chance to make his greatest wish come true. With that, the protagonist celebrates that he can now cultivate, but two disciples think he's a bit crazy. The guy starts wondering what kind of cultivator he should be, since there are so many options. But when he tried to use his knowledge, he found out he was useless without a spiritual root. He doesn't know if it was compensation from the heavens, but he was born with an innate flora-sacred body. But this constitution also has a problematic side effect that makes the guy feel a bit awkward sometimes. The guy's constitution makes him emit a fragrance of spiritual plants, and this attracts the girl. She is Mao, his junior sister, and they join the sect together, becoming best friends. The guy says he can't do anything about it, and the young woman is happy, saying he's the best. However, the protagonist seems to be thinking about something as he looks at the food. He reflects that, in the end, this kind of life doesn't seem so bad after all. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him, startling the two who were sitting peacefully. This woman is Wen Yu, the head disciple of the Zai sect, and she looks really mad. The guy gets nervous and says he'll get back to work immediately, asking his friend to get up. He thinks about how unlucky he is to run into this particular woman, as her punishments are extremely severe. But his friend stands up and defends him, saying Wen Yu is trying to work a mortal to the bone. The head disciple replies that it's his responsibility and accuses the girl of slacking off. Mio then accuses her of looking down on disciples with weak cultivation, but the other woman says she's just doing her job. The young woman doesn't accept this and says she won't let her bully her friend. No way. With that, the two stare each other down, ready to throw down at any moment right there in the garden. Wen Yu then attacks, saying the girl overestimates her own abilities, and lands a direct hit. The protagonist screams his friend's name as he sees her get hit and spit up blood after the attack. He holds her worried and asks if she's okay, and the girl says she is, even while coughing. The guy confronts her, but Wen Yu says she was just exercising her authority as the head disciple. The woman then forbids the two from seeing each other during work hours and looks at the boy. At this, the young man's face twists with anger as he hears the woman's words. Wen Yu then hops on her sword and flies away, telling the protagonist he's on his own. After a while, he bandages his friend's arm and complains that Wen Yu is a really tough woman. But the young man defends her, saying she's fair, and Mao gets mad that he's taking her side. The girl says that if she had a wisteria herb to improve her cultivation, she wouldn't be bullied like this. The girl gets scared and asks if he's thinking of stealing the herb, and the guy shushes her. The young man says you can't say things like that out loud, and they both look around nervously. The protagonist then tells his friend to leave everything to him, and gives her a confident smile. The girl hugs him, crying with happiness, but he complains that she's wiping her nose on him. Meanwhile, the head disciple was already far away, flying on her sword through the skies. Alone somewhere else, Wen Yu holds a shining artifact while observing the landscape. A new day begins with the sun rising beautifully between the great mountains of the place. Meanwhile, back at the spirit garden, a purple portal lights up, signaling someone's arrival. Out comes our protagonist, looking like he's about to cause some trouble. The guy then thinks that everyone must have gone back to meditate, which makes things much easier. But first things first, the young man decides he needs to water the spiritual herbs. So to do that, he grabs his watering can and gets ready to use a control talisman. Right after, the guy slaps a super strong weed removal talisman on the object. With that, the watering can starts to glow, and he notices the weeds are growing way too fast. After finishing his work, the boy finally approaches the field of wisteria herbs. He then looks at the plants and comments out loud on how densely they're growing. The young man reaches out his hand, preparing to grab one, saying that this will affect their growth. Suddenly, a voice interrupts him, and he spins around, startled, to see the insect master there. The protagonist stammers, trying to explain he was just helping trim the weeds. Not believing a word, the master creates a glowing red energy sphere in his hand. With that, he grabs him by the neck and lifts him into the air, calling him a vile beast caught red-handed. The master then orders the guards to finish the guy off, and they immediately agree. With that, the protagonist is thrown hard onto the ground, but he still holds onto the herb tightly. Without wasting any time, the master's men start beating the young man with their wooden clubs. Even while getting pummeled, the guy can only think of his friend as he protects the plant. Just as one of the guards was about to deliver the final blow, a voice yells for him to wait a moment. It was Mio, who had arrived to ask the master to stop, as his limbs would be broken. The protagonist is relieved and thinks that, as expected, his friend came to save him from his doom. The girl continues to beg the master to please listen to her, but her expression suddenly changes. She then asks that at least his body be left intact, and the guy is shocked. The young man asks what she means by that, and the woman replies that it's exactly what he heard. Then the girl starts walking slowly towards him, calling his name sweetly. She says he should blame himself for being too slow, as she had already given him several hints. The young woman then backs away and says that after he's gone, she'll take care of the spirit garden. The guy is left confused about what's happening as the guards prepare to attack. The master then orders them to bury him there, as his sacred body would still be useful underground. Suddenly, Wenyu arrives flying in and tells the master to wait, claiming Mio instigated all of this. The sect master then looks at the head disciple and asks if that's really true. The woman confirms it is, as she used a device to record images of their conversation. The girl panics and says she's been framed, accusing the two of having a secret affair. She clings to the master, and he calls her sweetie, saying she only stole his heart. Wenyu is disgusted by the scene and says that if the master can't tell right from wrong, then as a disciple, she'd rather not stay in the Xian sect anymore and prepares to escape. The woman's sword flies swiftly and attacks the guards surrounding the protagonist. Then, the weapon envelopes the injured guy in blue energy and lifts him off the ground. Miao points at the two and warns the master that they're trying to escape the sect. The guy then asks why she saved him, and the woman tells him to worry about himself. But the master transforms into a giant being and says the sect isn't a place you can just leave. The creature then launches a massive energy attack towards them, telling them to come back. The blast hits the ground hard, creating a gigantic purple energy explosion on the spot. The young woman complains that he promised to leave the body intact, but the old man says he's still useful. The guy realizes he didn't perish and that Wenyu protected him with her own body, but her injuries are severe. Lying on the ground, he thinks that it could go back in time. She probably wouldn't save him again. Filled with hatred, he curses Miao and the sect master, wondering why they have to go out like this. In his final moments, the young man thinks that if he could do it all over, he'd do things differently. He swears that if he had another chance, he'd take down that despicable couple with his own hands. A bright light envelopes him, and a voice says he has awakened the prodigious gardener system. With a smile on his face, the protagonist then asks the system what took it so long to show up. The system announces that it has been successfully awakened, and that rewards are being distributed. The guy is happy because the system arrived just in the nick of time, and a flower silhouette appears before him. The voice then announces that he has obtained a 100,000-year-old thousand-flower demon seed. The system informs him that the seed needs the host's blood essence to be activated, and the guy agrees without hesitation. Then a powerful red energy envelopes his body, and the form of a beautiful demon appears. The system's voice confirms that the flower demon seed is being successfully activated. Far away, Miao tells the master that the thief has been eliminated, and he puts her in charge of the garden. In the meantime, two disciples find the young man's body and notice a strange light coming from it. One of them thinks it might be something valuable and decides to dig it up before that fox Miao gets to it. But as soon as the shovel hits the ground, a small, bright flower sprouts from the earth, startling him. Suddenly, the plant grows explosively and sends the two disciples flying with its force. The master and the girl are shocked to see a giant flower sprouting in the middle of the garden. This flower was so immense that its size made it look like a cosmic phenomenon from another world. The woman asks what that thing is, and the old man says it's undoubtedly a great 10,000-year-old demon. He then explains that the demon race is divided into 4 realms, just like humans. The old man says that 100-year-old herbs are already great, and he can't even imagine the benefits of this one. The girl notices that the creature looks like a human, but the master says demons don't shapeshift. At that moment, the large flower fully opens, and from within emerges the beautiful demon of the Xiaohua race. The beautiful demon awakens from her long slumber, and her red eyes slowly open. The sect master is terrified to see a demon in human form and questions how powerful she is. Then the woman uses a special flower that acts as a voice transmitter to communicate. She tries to contact the other demon emperors of the 4 directions but gets no response. Suddenly, the young woman feels a sharp headache, and a strange image flashes before her eyes. The demon gets angry, remembering that her comrades were useless and perished in the Great War. Seeing this, the master orders the 2 disciples to capture the creature, but they hesitate in fear. The old man says she's weak and promises a reward, making the 2 rush to capture her. The demon smiles maliciously and says that 1 empress on the continent is more than enough. The 2 disciples start climbing the giant stem of the plant to try to reach the woman. The creature says that all humans must perish and launches an energy flower with a flick of her finger. The 2 men are confused as they are surrounded by glowing peony flowers that appeared out of nowhere. One of the flowers sticks to a disciple's face, and he gets completely freaked out. The flowers then begin to grow over the man's body, turning him into a stone statue. The demon is surprised and wonders why her power suddenly diminished so much. The sect master is terrified by the demon's power and realizes he can't handle her at all. So he decides the best strategy is to run, but the creature notices his escape attempt. The woman says it's too late for him to try to flee, and the old man looks back in fear. The man is hit by an attack of fluffy petals and screams desperately in pain, but the demon is shocked to see that her attack caused no damage to the sect master. She then understands that she can't control her power and tries to concentrate to attack again. With that, the creature launches a gigantic energy attack towards the master, telling him to disappear. The old man screams, shielding himself from the blow, but soon realizes that nothing happened to him again. He sees that her power vanished out of nowhere and laughs, because she's not at her full strength yet. Without wasting time, the master creates a purple energy sword and prepares to attack the demon. The blow hits the woman squarely, and she screams in pain as she's struck by the energy blade. Then the old man seizes the opportunity and grabs her by the neck with force to immobilize her. He begins to absorb her power, and the creature laments that she's going to fall to a weak human. From a distance, the protagonist watches the whole scene and doesn't look too happy about what he's seeing. The guy complains that the reward is weak, but the system says he needs to touch the plant for it to work. The protagonist realizes he needs to go over there and touch the creature to activate the system's power. Without a second thought, the young man runs towards the demon and asks her to give him her hand. The master attacks him with energy and calls him a vile creature, and the guy regrets almost making it. The old man threatens him with the sword, and the demon tells him to grab her hand quickly. The creature cries and thinks that humans are incorrigible for trying to touch her even at the end. But suddenly, the woman catches a scent from the guy that makes her feel comfortable and want to get closer. He then tries to reach for her foot, and the girl thinks that touching hands would be impossible. With a swift move, the protagonist manages to grab the demon's foot, and a bright light shines. The system congratulates him for capturing the plant, and the creature seems to be feeling something strange. The sect master is shocked by the energy emanating from the contact between the 2. The voice announces the awakening of the active talent, divine power, and the young man starts to float in the air. The guy yells in shock upon discovering that the ability is planting the demon in his belly. The creature then realizes that his danshin is also a kind of field for planting. The woman is confused, not knowing how she got there or what's happening to her power. The system announces that it has detected the herb and will now extract its source energy since it's planted. The furious master threatens to rip the plant out of the guy's belly for stealing his spirit, and the young man asks the system for help. The voice announces the human-plant union, and a sword with flower details forms on the guy's arm. The weapon has a very stylish look and seems to be extremely powerful in this new form. With a single blow, the protagonist completely destroys the mountain gate of the Zn sect. The master is thrown back by the force of the attack and is shocked, unable to believe what he's seeing. The system unlocks the person-plant form, and the young man complains that they could have picked a better name. 2 disciples hide in shock, and one of them wonders if that's still the useless Tian Yuan. In his new armor, the protagonist stands still, observing the damage he just caused. Then the guy realizes he has no control over his power, and that the blow missed the target by a mile. He refuses to miss again and prepares another attack with his flower sword to hit the old man. But the sect master creates 2 energy swords and yells at the young man not to underestimate him. Even so, the old man is hit and screams, not understanding where all that power is coming from the boy. With that, the master is on his knees, completely exhausted after taking the hit. Without giving him time to rest, the protagonist charges forward, screaming, and prepares to attack again. This time, the guy uses his legs and delivers a spinning kick with all his might towards the enemy. The blow lands squarely on the master's face, and the young man says this is the beginning of his counter-attack. With the old man down, the protagonist approaches and hears a strange noise coming from him. The master calls him a brute and says he won't achieve anything with just brute force, then unleashes his power. With that, the old man's body starts to grow, and he transforms into a super muscular man. The protagonist is shocked by the transformation, and the demon in his belly is also startled. The master activates his blood technique, and the demon calls the guy a pervert for some reason. Without wasting time, the protagonist attacks the master, who is surprised by the speed of the blow. The young man then asks if the old man's purple energy will work on his person, plant form. The master is shocked to see his attack easily deflected by the guy's sword. The demon yells for him to dodge quickly, but it's already too late to escape the counter-attack. With that, the protagonist's mask starts to crack, and his face is revealed underneath. The elder says that experience is everything and launches a powerful attack to see how much the young man can take. The demon laments that a human doesn't know how to use her power and thinks she's going to perish again. But suddenly, the creature feels a different energy coming from the guy and is quite surprised. The protagonist smiles and says he's written cultivation novels before, and no one has ever called him inexperienced. The master is stunned that he blocked the blow, and the young man says his sword regenerated and got stronger. The demon gets annoyed and yells at them to fight a little more seriously. The protagonist explains that cultivation techniques are based on the release of spiritual power. He then asks the master to watch carefully and prepares a new special move. The young man launches a peony flower attack that sends the master flying far away with the impact. With that, he uses spiritual energy to create a giant, glowing plant on the battlefield. The master realizes that the guy's use of ki is superior, and the young man says his time is up. With that, the elder is hit by several flower-shaped energy spheres and is left confused. A gigantic explosion occurs, and Himeo watches from afar, terrified by the power. The girl despairs, seeing that the old man is no match, and thinks her sacrifices were in vain. Defeated, the master begs for his life in the name of their relationship, but the guy remains silent. The old man offers the garden and even Himeo to the young man in an attempt to save himself. The protagonist smiles and says he can choose not to finish him, leaving the master hopeful. The elder blames everything on the girl and says she deserves the worst, leaving the woman shocked. Scared, Himeo tries to run away desperately, screaming that she doesn't want anything to happen to her. But the master grabs her and uses her as a sacrifice, saying he'll avenge her after he escapes. The demon comments that the guy is naive for showing mercy and not understanding human evil. Suddenly, the creature notices something and glances sideways with a serious expression. 3 crystal flower projectiles are fired at high speed towards the two. The attack pierces through the master and the girl he was using as a shield at the same time. The old man is shocked to realize he was tricked by the protagonist and spits up blood in pain. The protagonist smiles and says that because he's written many novels, he already knows what villains are like. Then, pink energy with petals begins to float away from the young man's hand. The energy transforms into a giant peony flower, and the demon says he's quite interesting. The creature then offers him the chance to be her exclusive slave if he kisses her feet. The young man then extends his hand to take her foot, but he seems a bit hesitant. But the guy slaps her foot and calls her an idiot for wanting him to be her master. The woman becomes furious and threatens him, but the protagonist doesn't seem the least bit impressed. The demon is embarrassed and wonders why she felt a shiver and craves his aura. With that, she grabs him by the collar and pulls him forcefully towards her, yelling for him to come here. The woman kisses him by surprise, and the guy is shocked because his body won't move. The protagonist then screams in his mind that that was his very first kiss ever. The guy asks what she's doing, but the demon says it's not enough, as being near him invigorates her. She squeezes his face hard while the young man tries to say something but can't. Then the creature kisses him again harder, and warns him not to even think about trying to escape. After a while, the two separate, and the guy, almost out of breath, complains that he nearly suffocated. The demon asks what kind of evil art he used and threatens to rearrange his face. But the protagonist replies that she was the one who forced herself on him, and that he did nothing. The guy accuses her of stealing his first kiss, and the woman says it was hers too, so they're even. He is shocked and asks how a great 10,000-year-old demon is having her first kiss now. The young woman yells angrily that it's none of his business, and tells him to shut up. The creature thinks about how absurd it is to be embarrassed in front of a human and tries to focus. She says he'd be better off as a body that doesn't talk. But the guy tells her not to be so casual. Suddenly, the woman realizes her power is recovering and is very surprised. The demon wonders if it's because of him, and the young man sees a good chance to escape. But the creature can't resist the urge to absorb his power whenever she gets close. She then decides to use him to regain her power first and sends out vines to capture him. The protagonist is captured, and she warns him not to try anything, as he is now her master. She wraps him in vines and begins to absorb his green energy, asking for more and more. The demon licks the guy's chest, saying it's not enough, and the young man gets scared. He screams in desperation and begs her not to bite him while he's being absorbed. The woman asks for more power to recover, but the guy seems to be on the verge of passing out. She teases him, but the young man says there isn't a single drop left, and his soul almost leaves his body. The demon spares him for now, and the guy calls her a beast, but she corrects him, saying she's a plant. Suddenly, a purple portal opens, and someone yells for them to enter, as the formation is ready. Some disciples notice the master's aura has vanished, and one of them runs to help his master. The creature gets annoyed by the interruption, and prepares to launch an attack to finish them off. The protagonist stops her, saying that many disciples are innocent and she can't do that. She tells him to get lost with a slap, sending him flying for trying to stop her. The woman warns that if he doesn't disappear soon, she'll take him out too, and prepares her attack. With that, the demon launches a massive energy attack towards the sect's disciples. But she's shocked to see her attack missed and asks what trick he pulled. The guy on the ground reminds the creature that she grew from his dancing, and without his help, she can't use her power freely. He then yells for her to let the disciples go but ends up getting a punch to the face for his audacity. With that, the demon gets a furious look on her face because of his stubbornness. She then starts laughing, saying that humans are ungrateful beasts and don't appreciate his help. At that moment, the eldest disciple steps on the young man's chest and says he's weak and will reward everyone. The man says that when the guy is gone, the master's position and the demon will be his. But the woman gets annoyed by this. Suddenly, the protagonist and the creature spit up blood at the same time, shocked by the pain. The disciple prepares to attack with his hammer, and the young man thinks he needs to use his special form. But before he can do anything, a beam of light hits the man and sends him flying. The man gets up, saying the attack didn't break his defenses, but he was just bluffing. The protagonist smiles and says he wasn't bluffing, asking if he feels a warmth in his belly. The disciple is confused but soon feels something strange and screams when he sees his pants moving on their own. The young man explains that he just needs to inject a little power into the dancing for a miracle to happen. The man complains that this only stops him from relieving himself and says he'll still win the fight. Then the protagonist gets annoyed by his stubbornness and hits him with a powerful punch to the face. The demon watches the fight and finds it boring to see the guy using the same technique over and over. She then gets confused and wonders how a human can use demonic power to cast arts. The creature decides to give the power back to him and warns him not to disappoint her with his performance. The young man sees an opening and slaps the disciple across the face, who screams in pain from the blow. But he realizes something is wrong, and his hand starts to be enveloped in pink energy. The power manifests as a giant hand that hits the disciple and sends him flying far away. The man is terrified when he sees the energy hand and trembles in fear at the display of power. The attack blows up part of the mountain and leaves a giant handprint on the landscape. Defeated, the disciple kneels and begs for his life, and the guy tells him to disperse everyone. The protagonist thinks he almost took someone out, and that the power surge was the demon's doing. She tells him to give up, and the young man tells her to shut up and not meddle in his affairs. He tells her not to bother him, but the demon is impressed by the power of his blow. The creature explains that demonic power is strong, but they can't compete with human arts. She then reflects that if their power were as flexible as humans, she would have won the war. Back in the present, a shovel is driven hard into the ground of the sect's spiritual garden. Kneeling on the ground, the protagonist asks the system if there's really no other way. The system's voice then confirms there's no other option as his friend's body is covered in a green energy. The system warns that it did its best, but the head disciple's body will deteriorate in a week. The guy reflects that they've only known each other for a few years and haven't had any pleasant memories together. But he realizes he misunderstood her all along, as she wasn't targeting him personally. The woman was always the senior sister who didn't fear power and stood up for justice firmly. Sitting on a cliff, he wonders if there's really nothing they can do now. With that, the young man refuses to believe there isn't a single life-saving treasure in this world. So he asks the system to search for and list all the spiritual plants that can help. The guy is happy because the system has an encyclopedia, and the search finds 15 results. The first is a material used by the corpse sect to refine living bodies into undead ones. The next is an emperor grass that can take control of a deceased person's body. Then an herb appears that makes the user hallucinate that the deceased has returned, and he gets annoyed by this. The young man complains about the stupid methods, but the system tells him to calm down so it can explain them one by one. He then stops complaining and pays attention to the next option that appears on the system screen. This is the immortal lotus root, which if planted in a body, causes it to be reborn as a lotus demon. The guy thinks this is the only way, but it means she would no longer be human. Not caring, he decides to save her and asks the system to mark the root's location. But the system warns that it doesn't have the function to locate spiritual plants, and the guy is shocked. With that, the young man gets angry and smashes everything, asking what the system is good for then. The voice then explains that although it can't, it knows someone who can sense their location. Meanwhile, somewhere else, the demon lands on a branch and asks if they are around here. The creature then looks around with a disdainful expression while searching for something. In the background, we can see a small wooden cabin that seems to be well hidden in the forest. But the woman is surprised to realize that the small Zai insect hides many spiritual plants. Suddenly, she hears a cry for help and quickly turns in the direction of the voice that called her. It was the protagonist being attacked by plants that had gained consciousness, and he's complaining about the danger. The demon then orders the plants to devour the guys to become her strength. The creature notices that the young man's energy is good and wonders if he's a master of horticulture. The protagonist yells that he was the one who planted them, and the woman gets annoyed by his irritating voice. With that, the guy calls the plants by their names and asks them to stop the attack now. The young man runs through the jungle that is formed and yells that no one there is allowed to eat people. So he tells them to be good and spit everyone out, and one of them obeys instantly. The creature finds it interesting that the plants obey him, as besides her, only the demon emperors could do that. The protagonist then replies with pride, telling her not to underestimate the strong bond they have. One of the plants rubs against the demon, and she finds it disgusting that he gave them names. The woman says the disciples came to steal and that he should use them as fertilizer. The captured men beg for help and blame everything on someone named Jin Shang. But the culprit was already hanging from a tree, passed out and foaming at the mouth. With that, the young man says the others can leave, as he no longer cares about their fate. The guy then turns to the creature and asks if she knows where the immortal lotus root is. The demon gives a wicked smile and asks if by any chance he's trying to save someone. He confirms that he wants to save his senior sister, because she saved his life before anything else. The woman says she can sense the root but seems a bit hesitant to help the boy. She then stares at him and asks why she should tell a despicable human like him. The guy promises to help her regain her strength, and the demon gets all flustered by this. With that, the creature calls him a pervert and lands a solid punch on the boy's face. She then threatens the disciples, saying she'll trade their lives for the location of the root. The protagonist gets a very tense look on his face, not knowing what to do in that situation. He thinks that a ruthless protagonist would have already finished them off, but he can't be like that. With that, the young man accepts that he's not a super powerful hero and decides to try a different method. So the guy yells at the disciples, warning them that Lady Feiwa wants their useless lives. He accuses them of trying to seize power and steal the plants, saying their crimes are unforgivable. The guy says that the merciful lady needs to rebuild her plant army, and the demon is confused. He then offers to teach them how to cultivate the plants, so she won't be a lonely commander. But the creature gets angry and yells that she doesn't want these brainless plants as her army. The guy points to the cute plants and asks if she, as the master of flowers, can just leave them alone. The woman then agrees that they are cute and, with a snap of her fingers, releases all the disciples. She warns that if they don't take good care of her followers, she will end them all. The men thank them both, and one of them swears to serve the protagonist as a slave forever. The young man gets annoyed and tells them all to get lost, saying he'll call them if he needs anything. The disciples leave, and the guy wonders how he became the sect master but accepts his fate. He turns to the creature and asks where the immortal lotus root is, since he fulfilled his part of the deal. The demon smiles and warns him that he might have the life to get there, but not to come back alive. In the meantime, somewhere else, we see the Blissful Alliance, a place full of powerful women. One of the disciples excitedly yells for the new sect plaque to be put up as quickly as possible. With that, one of the servants calls for the new sect master, asking him to come take a look at something. The young man then looks at the new plaque with his name on it, and the disciple praises him, saying it represents their admiration. The guy feels a bit awkward and says it's a little embarrassing that they named the entire sect after him. But deep down, the protagonist admits that being flattered like this feels really good and satisfying. The creature then appears and questions if he's already letting pride get to him over something so small. The disciples see her and bow, calling her the master's wife, leaving the demon speechless. The woman becomes completely furious and yells, asking who they're calling wife, and if they want to get taken out. She threatens to rip out their tongues and hang them on a tree they continue with this nonsense. Watching the scene, the protagonist suddenly wonders why she's looking so cute right now. The demon then pulls his ear hard and asks if he was the one who taught the servants to say that. The guy tells her to hurry up and give him the root's location, but the woman says he might chicken out. The creature then reveals that for him to understand everything, she needs to start telling the story from many years ago. The woman says that a human cultivator, who knew the power of spirits, led a hunt against her clan. The young woman explains that back then, her clan of plant spirits was scattered all over the world. The creature says that the man gave her captured clan members as rewards to other cultivators. And while creating enemies for the demons, he also helped establish the foundations of many sects. She says that among them was the blissful sect, the most wicked of them all, and the root is right there. The protagonist then asks how she can be sure that this sect still exists after so long. The woman explains that one of their techniques is unique, and just thinking about those perverts makes her sick. She then advises him to wait until she's stronger, but feels embarrassed for sounding desperate. But the guy holds her and says he can't wait because his friend is fading, and she needs to keep her promise. The demon pushes him away forcefully, and yells at him not to touch her like that because she doesn't like it. She says he's forbidden from touching her, but the young man agrees as long as she helps save his friend. The woman says there's a way even without her full strength, but he'll have to follow her every order. With that, the protagonist asks the disciples if anyone has a storage ring to carry his friend. One of the servants steps forward, says he has one, and offers to take him to the sect's treasure vault. The guy runs off happy as can be, thinking this is a classic moment of looting an enemy's stash. The creature watches him and thinks he's very naive, and the more knave, the easier to control. Besides, she thinks that as long as she finds a person named Mai there, everything will work out. The creature gives a wicked smile and thinks that this way, she might get a chance to start the immortal war. Arriving at the vault, the protagonist finds a pill and notes that it's just like the ones in the novels he used to read. He asks the system if he can use it, but the voice warns that it wouldn't be very effective for his cultivation. With that, the young man decides to reward the servant with the pill, and the boy is very impressed. The servant asks if he's not going to use it, and the master says he doesn't need common items like that. The disciples whisper in shock that the master called a rare pill a common item, and is talking to himself. One of the servants then thinks that his master's strength is truly unfathomable and impossible to measure. Furthermore, he admires the fact that the young man can control the demon empress and is still humble. The guy wonders if he's winning their loyalty and thinks that this alone won't be enough. So the young man clears his throat and says that since they've already seen his strength, he'll stop hiding it. He then reveals he's the reincarnation of an immortal, and that joining the sect is part of his cultivation. The guy warns that if they disobey him, the seals on their bodies will explode instantly. The servants are terrified and wonder when these seals were placed on their bodies. But the guy says he's not unreasonable and will distribute the pills to help everyone's cultivation. The men thank him and swear to take good care of the plants so as not to waste the master's kindness. The protagonist announces he'll be gone for a few days, and leaves the servant in charge with a flower for contact. The servant introduces himself as Xiao, but thinks the master has already figured out his secret of being a girl. With that, the guy comments that the name sounds like a girl's, and the young woman panics, thinking she's been found out. He ignores this and tells Manga to watch the others, warning that if they don't do it right, the demon will punish them. The other disciples then joke with the girl, asking her not to forget them when she gets promoted. The master thinks the cultivators will now know what it's like to be a slave, and is happy to have the vault to himself. Alone, he uses the storage ring to see if he can find a weapon that matches his style. He then recognizes the old sect master's sword and says that even though it belonged to an old man, it's pretty cool. With the weapon in hand, the young man finally feels like he's in a true immortal cultivation world. Suddenly, the sword transforms into a shovel, and he asks the system what's going on. The voice explains that the sword has a consciousness and transformed into its ideal form, but he tells it to change back. With that, the weapon starts repeatedly hitting him on the head, and the young man gets really annoyed by the pain. He complains about the broken shovel, but the system corrects him, saying it's now the golden shovel of fury. The guy despairs and wonders if he can save his friend like this, and the system blames him. Meanwhile, in an endless desert beyond the Great Wall, something strange seems to be happening. A giant cocoon emerges from the sand, and a mysterious voice curses the Xian sect with great hatred. The golden sword flies swiftly over the vast, endless desert that stretches to the horizon. The guy complains about the heat, and asks the creature if she's sure they didn't take a wrong turn. He then reflects that they've flown for miles without seeing anyone, and that he needs more information about this world. Suddenly, the system warns that his spiritual power has run out, and the shovel will make an emergency landing, and he panics. The young man then complains to the system for not warning him sooner, and the voice replies that he didn't ask. With that, the shovel loses altitude, and the two crash land inside a small oasis in the middle of the desert. The guy is relieved not to have perished in the fall and comments on his incredible luck. But he realizes he landed right on top of the demon girl, who gets all embarrassed by the awkward situation. The creature then makes a furious face and looks like she's about to explode at any moment. With that, the woman slaps him across the face and yells for the boy to stop it immediately. He says it's the shovel's fault, and she retorts that most of her spiritual power is with him. The guy tells her to lead the way, but the creature complains that he's harassed her enough for one day. Suddenly, a mysterious voice interrupts them and asks how they dare to do something so shameless. This mysterious man then draws his sword and says he will deliver justice in the name of the heavens against the couple. Without wasting time, he launches a quicksand attack to try to bury them both alive right there. The man celebrates that his attack worked and laughs, saying they got what they deserved. But suddenly, he realizes he's been tied up by vines with flowers and is very confused. Then a ginseng root starts beating him, and the man begs for mercy, asking it to stop. The protagonist complains that sand got into strange places, and the demon appears by his side. With that, the man is thrown to the ground by the vines and yells at the guy for daring to stand in his way. The young man confronts him, asking why he was attacked, and the man thinks he's found strong opponents. However, the masked cultivator seems hesitant to answer and stammers nonstop. He then throws sand in the protagonist's face and accuses him of being a cultivator from the Blissful Alliance. The guy wonders how they found a thief out here, and the creature warns that the golden shovel has been stolen. Startled, the guy looks at his waist and realizes the weapon is indeed no longer there. The thief boasts about his escape arts and uses a technique to dive into the sand and get away. He thinks that with the Alliance's token, it'll be very easy to infiltrate the place without getting caught. But suddenly, a lotus flower vine wraps tightly around the man's chest. The thief is startled to be caught, and the vine tightens around his ankle, pulling him back. Captured, the man yells for the guy to let him go, calling him a disgusting, evil cultivator. An explosion happens on the ground, and the vine pulls the thief into the sand with great force. With that, the man is thrown backward and screams in pain as he's pulled underground. The guy knew there was a celestial cave under the desert, and is pulled in along with the demon. The two then arrive at the thief's hideout, and the protagonist says it looks like they've found the right place. The man despairs upon seeing them and lights a flare, pretending not to be afraid of them. He then launches a green signal into the sky and threatens them, saying his thousands of comrades will arrive. The young man braces for a tough fight, but the creature simply calls him an idiot. The thief continues to bluff about his cruel methods, and is happy that they believed him. Suddenly, 3 people appear to help the man, leaving him completely shocked. But the newcomers are captured mid-air by vines and are trapped, unable to move. The protagonist is annoyed with the situation, and the demon tells him to end this charade already. The captured ones complain that the signal was to flee, and the girl says that now it's their turn to protect. One of the men shouts that they will never be human cauldrons again and curses them. The guy is confused and says they're not from the Alliance, and that the thief stole his artifact. One of the men opens the thief's bag and finds the golden shovel, asking if that's a hoe. The thief laughs and says it wasn't an Alliance token after all, and he thought only perverts would do that in broad daylight. The protagonist and the demon blame themselves for the misunderstanding as the guy apologizes to the man. The young man gets angry and says a simple apology isn't enough for trying to rob them. The man pleads, saying he's not a thief and offers compensation, but his village is poor, so he has to bluff. The guy says he doesn't want his spirit stones, and the thief is surprised by the response. The protagonist then proposes a deal, asking for all the information on the Alliance in exchange for their freedom. The man tells them that the Alliance captured a giant beast and moved the entire city onto its back. With that, the Alliance's cultivators began to constantly exploit the villages in search of wealth. They also kidnapped people to use as human cauldrons, and not even children were spared. The thief sadly reveals that his younger sister was one of the people taken by them. He then explains that he found this cave and that's why he attacked, thinking they were from the Alliance. The guy is shocked to realize he's activated a side quest and doesn't want to get involved. He understands that the thief wanted the token to save his sister, but he doesn't know where to get one to help him. Suddenly, a strong explosion shakes the entire cave, and a purple energy fills the place. A muscular man appears, saying he knew there was a secret place under the desert. He and his fat companion look at the hideout and say it seems to be the hideout of the Yusha clan. The protagonist gets really annoyed and wonders why the guy is stealing his lines. The muscular man laughs, saying the remnants of the Yusha clan are here, and his partner agrees it will be a good prize. The thief realizes he can't take them, and the protagonist gets annoyed with the perverts, so the man decides to play the victim. With that, the masked man runs towards the two and kneels on the ground, asking for a favor. He then asks them to take the children and flee, as he won't be able to survive this fight. The man charges at the villains, and the young man notes that he's overacting a bit. One of the enemies scoffs at him for being weak, but the other says he likes masochists and seems excited. The masked man prepares to fight, but his attacks are easily blocked by the energy blades. With that, he is captured and immobilized by the villain's energy, wondering why he's not getting any help. The protagonist's cloak is torn, and his muscular body is revealed by the energy binding him. The villains are impressed with the guy's physique, and the fat one comments that he's a fine specimen. The fatter man then asks to be the first to have a taste, and the protagonist calls them beasts. The young man easily breaks free and says that was punishment for trying to guilt trip him. He then admits that although he hates being manipulated, the trick ended up working on him. The skinny villain then questions if he wants to play the hero and save the damsel in distress. The enemy points to the golden shovel, and the protagonist shouts for help from a mortal weaker than himself. Angrily, the protagonist says he'll show them what a mortal can do and gets ready to fight. He then yells for the demon to combine with him, and the golden shovel begins to glow intensely. The creature complains that she won't fight those disgusting things and transfers her power to him. The villains mock him for relying on a woman, and the fat one says he'll make him experience being one. The young man thinks that with demonic power, he can create his own techniques and test his level. The enemy attacks him, telling him to perish, and the protagonist prepares to use his new ability. With a new technique, the guy prepares to use a mountain plucking technique, and the demon is startled. The creature notices that the demonic power is being drained rapidly to create this new technique. The woman then realizes that he's using demonic power to create human techniques and is surprised. One of the children asks what his cultivation level is, and the guy replies that he's just a mortal. With a single powerful blow, the protagonist sends both villains flying and embeds them in the wall. The young man is surprised by his own power and thinks that now he can use the techniques from his novel. The demon praises him and promises to make him her number one lackey when she revives the demon race. But the guy corrects her, saying they are partners and don't have that kind of relationship. With that, the two start arguing, and the creature glares at him angrily, asking if he wants to fight. The child praises their methods, but the protagonist and the demon both yell that it's not dual cultivation. The creature gets all flustered and thinks that even if it looks like it doesn't count at all. The guy coughs awkwardly and tells the child to stop asking questions and get her people out of there, as the place has been exposed. She then questions if he's also planning to infiltrate the Alliance for the token. The young man confirms it and says he's also going to save someone, but can't go out of his way to save her sister. The girl offers a map of the Alliance and a portrait of her sister as a thank you and a way to help. The guy thinks she's very different from before, but she ignores him and starts explaining her infiltration plan. The child points out the weakest spot on the map and says he can use his attack to open an escape route. He questions if that won't attract reinforcements, but she reassures him, saying there's a second step. The plan is to turn the place into an underground labyrinth full of traps to delay the enemies. The girl shows him her sister's portrait and asks if he's willing to help in exchange for a treasure. The guy accepts the mission and thinks that now he has one more responsibility and is curious about the treasure. The child thanks him with a sincere smile and calls him her benefactor for his help. Arriving at the desert entrance, the girl warns that she can only take him this far. She then says goodbye and says she'll wait for his signal as the young man ventures into the desert alone. The guy tells the child not to get discovered, and the demon complains that she'll remember these clothes. But the girl calls them back, and the protagonist asks what she wants now that they're leaving. She then uses a blessing rune from the Yusha clan to protect them on their dangerous journey. The child wishes for the moon goddess to protect them and grant them a safe return home. The young man says goodbye, and the girl thinks that for a moment, she wished they weren't going to that evil place. But she composes herself and thinks that this is the only chance she has to save her younger sister. At the Alliance entrance, a tough-looking woman approaches them and says they're new around here. The demon and the protagonist look at each other, confused, wondering if their clothes are really that conservative. The guy then points to a woman in more modest clothes and asks if she isn't more conservative. The woman smiles and turns to them, revealing a very feminine and elegant look. With a quick move, the woman slaps on a fake mustache and tells them she's transgender. She invites them in, and the two follow her into the Alliance while the woman smiles. In the background, we can see a muscular woman with a gag in her mouth, standing like a statue. The protagonist and the demon are shocked and wonder if everyone here is an idiot. The protagonist yells with all his might as a powerful purple energy starts to emanate from his body. With that, he's enveloped in a purple aura and asks if he can finally enter now. The guard recognizes the sex technique and says the token is active, allowing him entry. The guy complains about the embarrassment and mutters that she learned fast, just like that old dog Zion. But the muscular woman stops the creature, saying the token alone isn't enough to get in. The creature gets annoyed and tells the fat pig to get her hands off her, or she'll make her wish she was never born. The protagonist panics, thinking he's gonna start a fight before they even get inside. But the muscular woman realizes it's the sex queen and starts drooling excitedly. With that, she invites them in, and the guy is shocked that that's all it took. The woman introduces herself as Lai Xingnu, and the guy comments that she seems to really like the creature. Inside the Alliance's inner hall, someone desperately yells for the Alliance Master. This woman is Bo Gang, and she says that Fei Bo's life plate has shattered, demanding justice. This is Master Kucha, one of the three heroes, and he tells the woman not to get so agitated. The woman yells at the old man, but he tells her to be quiet and calls her a shrew. With that, we see the shattered life plate in detail with the name, Stick, written on it. The old master is shocked to see Stick's plate and wonders whose essence he's going to absorb now. The woman laughs, saying he deserved it, and the old man calls her a bastard, preparing to attack her. Suddenly, a mysterious voice tells them both to be quiet, and a powerful aura fills the room. This is Luigi, the master of the Alliance, and he scolds them for acting like little kids. The fat woman tries to explain, but the master interrupts her with a serious expression. The man says the grand ceremony is near, and many sects will try to infiltrate the Alliance. He then reveals his plan to capture them all at once, and then swallow their sects whole. The woman gets excited and says it's been a while since she's had cultivator, stuffed buns. With 2 energy spheres, the master observes the ceremony, and says he's looking forward to the fun. Outside, on the master's peak, we see the grand and imposing temple of the Blissful Alliance. The protagonist and the demon walk through the place, and the guy feels disgusted, thinking they're all perverts. He then focuses on his mission and thinks he needs to find the immortal lotus root as quickly as possible. The young man is weighing his options when suddenly someone calls out to them and tells them to stop. This girl with blue hair and a mustache complains that the ceremony food is bad and asks for meat. The protagonist asks who she is, and the demon notes that they've been mistaken for Alliance servants. The girl says she's a guest and tells him to take her to the treasury, and the guy thinks they both want the same thing. The creature warns him to be careful, as her aura is strange and her body is incredibly tough. The young man thinks this could be an opportunity, and since they have the same goal, he decides to try to win her over. He then agrees to take her to eat, and the girl points for him to lead the way confidently. The guy takes her to an isolated room and watches her through the door's reflection with a serious expression. The blue-haired girl notices the place doesn't look like the treasury and confronts him about it. He confirms it's not the treasury and assumes she wasn't really looking for meat either. The young woman gets angry and accuses him of trying to trick her as a powerful blue aura envelopes her. The guy shields himself from the attack and reveals he's not a guest, asking her to calm down so they don't alert the Alliance. The girl is surprised and questions if he's not from the Alliance either, and the protagonist smiles. He then introduces himself as Wang Yuan and says he's also there to find the treasury. The three discuss the best way to find the treasury, and the girl suggests lying. The young woman gets annoyed and asks what he suggests then, since her plan is clearly not going to work. The guy then proposes they team up and shows her a flyer for the Alliance's fighting tournament. The winner of the tournament can choose a treasure from the treasury, and the flyer shows the prizes. The girl says she's already thought of that, but what she wants isn't on the tournament's prize list. The protagonist then explains that's where their cooperation comes in, as she will find out the location. The young woman asks what's in it for him, and the guy proposes to help her get the root in exchange for the treasury. With a smile on her face, the girl accepts the deal and says the Shukun Wang Yuan combo is born. The creature doubts the girl can win, but the guy trusts her unparalleled physical strength. The young woman yells for him not to fall behind, and the protagonist runs to keep up with her on their journey. In a fighting arena, a woman asks a glutton if he's warmed up enough for the fight. A muscular man is down on the ground, all beaten up, and the referee declares him qualified for the tournament. The crowd is shocked by the defeat of the demon instructor and comments on her gender. The woman introduces herself as Xiao Hu and her partner Glutton, a giant, muscular goo worm. The creature questions if he's going to leave the girl alone, but he says the finals are still a long way off. In the arena, the blue-haired young woman defeats her opponent with a single punch and shouts, "Perish humans!" The protagonist thinks that if the map is correct, the slave auction should be very close by. Arriving at the location, the creature thinks the guy is a lost cause for believing he can save people. They then arrive at a large hall, and the young man comments that slave auctions are common in cultivation stories. An employee guides them to a private chamber, and the guy says it's all good as long as they get back for the finals. The man is impressed by the high-quality spirit stones the protagonist has. He then notices the Elysium token, and seems surprised to see it in the young man's possession. The protagonist and the demon sit on a couch, and he comments on how 2 stones got them treated like royalty. The creature says she's going to get some too, and the guy replies that he doesn't need them to cultivate. On stage, a man announces the next item up for auction, a new creation from the Elysium League. A beautiful girl with fox ears is presented, and the audience gets excited about the courtesan. The protagonist watches the scene with a serious expression, paying attention to every detail of the auction. The auctioneer announces that the girl was created with the secret runes of the Quicksand clan. He then explains that harvesting from her will be twice as effective and fun for the buyer. The protagonist is furious and calls the men beasts for their cruel and inhuman actions. The creature reminds him of his mission and asks if he's forgotten that he needs to save his friend. The young man says he hasn't forgotten and thinks he should have expected this kind of filth from the Elysium League. Someone in the audience asks if the slaves can fight back, and the auctioneer seems to like the question. He then offers a sample to the guest, and the man in the audience accepts the proposal. The auctioneer shows an obedience potion and explains that it's perfect for the courtesans. With that, the fox girl is forced to drink the potion, and a blue liquid enters her mouth. The demon recognizes the potion as being from my way and gets a look of hatred on her face. The auctioneer then tells the girl to take off her clothes, and she begins to obey, even against her will. Disgusted by the scene, the protagonist launches an attack and destroys the auction stage with a single blow. The auctioneer confronts him, but the guy completely ignores him and focuses on the situation. The young man says he'll buy them all and offers a large deposit of spirit stones. The man is shocked to see 1,000 high-quality stones and celebrates his luck at the auction. With a wicked smile, he says his quota for the year is covered, but the protagonist interrupts him. The guy is furious and questions if they really kidnap girls and sell them at auction. With a powerful attack, the guy sends the auctioneer flying and questions him about the rules. The demon calls him a fool and finds it absurd that he's risking everything for a simple mortal girl. The auctioneer begs for his life, saying he's just a puppet and it's not his fault. But the protagonist remembers the disgusting man and threatens him with his shining golden shovel. Suddenly, a mysterious voice questions him for causing trouble and trying to tarnish the league's name. The creature then launches an attack with her branches and defeats all the guards that appeared. One of the enemies steps on a fallen man and says the guy has a few tricks up his sleeve. This is Blood Shadow, one of the 3 prodigies of the league, and he promises to restore order. The protagonist protects the fox girl, and the creature wonders how a human can be so strong. Meanwhile, the blue-haired young woman hears an explosion and wonders what that noise was. She then enters the tournament arena, and the announcer calls the semifinal with Master Shu Kun. The crowd goes wild as the girl enters, shouting that their master is simply invincible. Next, her opponent is announced as the underdog Xiao with her partner, Glutton the Goo Worm. Xiao's fans also cheer for her, saying the young fighter is their wife. The announcer then asks both fighters to state which treasure they most desire to win. Both fighters then reveal they want the immortal lotus root, and stare each other down with determination. With that, the announcer is surprised and declares that the Elysium League semifinal has finally begun. From afar, the Alliance Master watches the fight, and says that now things have gotten very interesting. He then orders Bogang to test the 2 body cultivators, since Blood Shadow is at the auction. A little earlier at the auction, several men observe the scene, ready to intervene at any moment. Blood Shadow asks for calm and says he'll resume the auction as soon as he deals with the 2 pests. The protagonist tells the fox girl to stay behind him and merges with the demon to fight. The enemy thinks it's a trick to blind him and charges forward with a fast, powerful attack. He says he doesn't need eyes to finish the guy off, and readies his blade for the strike. With an energy shield, the protagonist protects himself from the attack, and a large explosion occurs. The villain is confused by the protective aura and wonders if the wound disappeared due to dual cultivation. Suddenly, vines sprout from his weapon, and he realizes this is not good news for him. He uses a demonic art to break free and grabs the fox girl, who can't react. Trapped by the vines, the enemy asks if they've forgotten his other important title. He then transforms into the Fire Shadow, and a fiery aura completely envelopes him. With a powerful fire attack, he burns the vines and frees himself from the plant prison. He then launches an attack towards the protagonist, telling him to leave the merchandise behind. But the guy appears with the girl as a hostage and threatens to finish her if the enemy comes closer. The creature calls him crazy and says he would never risk his life for a few mortals. Blood Shadow pretends to surrender and asks them not to hurt the girl, as they can talk. The protagonist is surprised and wonders if his bluff actually worked on the enemy. But the villain laughs and reveals he would never say something like that, as the distance is already perfect for his plan. He then uses a beast command ring to try to capture the guy in his armor. A green energy envelopes the protagonist and pulls him towards the ring with great force. The enemy explains that since the courtesans aren't human, they can be stored in beast rings. The audience is impressed by the villain's intelligence, and one of them comments that he was almost convinced. The Fire Shadow then promises to compensate everyone with a 20% discount at the auction. The crowd goes wild with the offer, yelling for him to take the stones and asking for more production. The demon complains that their cover is blown and tells the protagonist to retreat immediately. With his armor cracked, the young man gets furious and asks how they can treat people like cattle. The creature says that blocking the attack was already her limit and that he's going to do something reckless again. She then confronts him, saying the enemy is much stronger and that the woman isn't even human anymore. The guy gets angry at her words and questions if she's even human herself to say something like that. He then says that even if he's just a tool to her, to him, she's a person too. The demon is shocked and wonders if the guy really considers her one of his own kind. The protagonist says there's no point in having so many weapons if he can't save anyone with them. He then says that if she were the one in the cage, he would risk his life to save her without hesitation. The villain charges forward and asks what they're whispering about in the middle of their fight. Without wasting time, the enemy attacks with his weapon, but the guy manages to dodge the blow. The fire shadow is surprised to see his attack missed, and the protagonist appears behind him. The young man nearly gets his head taken off, and the creature scolds him for losing focus in the fight. He then thanks her and tells her to grab the Sumeru ring and get out of there as fast as possible. The villain is then trapped by a giant wooden branch and wonders if it's the same trick again. But this time, he uses his fire power to break open the branch and free himself from the wooden prison. The enemy creates multiple fire clones and sends them towards the guy to attack him from all sides. The clones fire red energy beams, and the villain says he wants to see how he'll escape this. With his eyes glowing, the protagonist calls his sword and prepares for a counter-attack. The weapon manifests, and he uses it to launch a powerful attack against the enemy's clones. The system then announces that the moving cloud sword has detected a new host and is adapting. The villain is shocked to see a superior, grade artifact and shields himself from the guy's attack. The protagonist recognizes his golden shovel, which now has the form of a beautiful peony flower. Injured, the enemy realizes the artifact's power and worries about how long his clones will last. Without wasting time, he uses a great blood garment art to increase his power. The audience complains to the fire shadow, and he captures them with a powerful red energy. The villain says he just needs their bodies and promises to return them carefully after the fight. The protagonist charges forward, calling him a monster and telling him to perish right there for his crimes. In the arena, the blue-haired girl seems to be panting and tired from the long fight she's in. The goo worm also looks exhausted, with smoke coming from its body as it prepares for more. The woman finds it interesting to trade blows with him and praises the girl's strength, even while suppressing her goo. Xiaohui then asks why the young woman wants the lotus root and if it's to save someone too, but the blue-haired girl angrily replies that it's to save her grandfather, and it's none of her business. From afar, Bo Gang watches the fight and seems very interested in what's happening. She then gives a wicked smile and licks her lips, thinking about how lucky she got with the situation. The blue-haired girl uses a cloud-splitting palm and attacks the goo worm with force. Xiaohui screams her partner's name as she sees him being hit by the young woman's powerful blow. The woman then seizes the opportunity and leaps to attack the girl while she's distracted. But the blue-haired young woman turns in time and lands a powerful insect kick on her opponent. Xiaohui manages to grab her foot and scoffs, saying the insect hits harder than the girl. With a swift move, the young woman breaks free and sends the woman flying with a kick. She then launches a massive energy attack to knock her opponent out of the ring for good. The announcer wonders if Xiaohui slipped and if the fight is about to end, but the goo worm appears and saves her from the fall, praising its partner's courage. The girl complains that this is cheating, as her opponent is still flying even though she's out of the ring. The announcer explains that since she didn't use cultivation, there was no full play, and the fight continues. With a determined look, Xiaohui prepares to attack and says that now is the right time. The blue-haired young woman is confused and wonders if it's another one of her opponent's tricks. The goo worm then holds its partner and prepares her to launch the true and powerful insect kick. The attack hits the ground hard, creating a gigantic green energy explosion in the ring. The announcer is shocked by the incredible force and says the ring is covered in dust. The blue-haired girl says she felt a little pain and that now it's time to fight seriously. Xiaohui and her partner appear, and she says the young woman is an opponent worthy of her strength. The announcer is shocked to see the entire ring has been destroyed and worries about the spectators. Suddenly, Bo Gang appears and says there's no need to restore the ring's formation. The woman declares herself the champion and challenges the two fighters to come at her. The announcer calls her a great hero, but she gets angry and says this breaks the rules. With a wicked smile, Bo Gang questions if he dares to lecture one of the three heroes. The woman then attacks him with a slap and tells him to call her princess next time. With her eyes glowing, she prepares to fight, and a powerful purple aura envelopes her. She then says the rules mean nothing, but if they beat her, the title is theirs. The two are shocked to realize the woman saw through their disguises and wonder if they'd been exposed. Bo Gang tells them not to be shocked and asks if they're gonna fight now, or rest first. The blue-haired young woman says she doesn't need rest and charges forward to attack alongside her opponent. The princess then stops their attack with her hands and tells them not to rush, as there are new rules. She announces that the battlefield is the entire alliance, and that cultivation can be unleashed. With a powerful punch, she sends Xiaohui flying with the force of her blow's impact. The woman then reveals that the way to decide the winner is a fight to the finish between them. Su Kun's fans scream her name as they see her being launched against one of the Alliance's buildings. Bo Gang tells the young woman not to worry about the others and attacks her along with her Gu partner. Xiaohui desperately screams her partner's name as she sees him being hit by the blow. The princess tells them not to run, and the woman is surprised by the opponent's monstrous strength. Suddenly, a loud sound catches Xiaohui's attention, and she wonders what's happening. The blue-haired girl appears, giant and furious, saying the princess dared to sneak attack her. With that, the young woman uses her shooting star, rending palm to attack the woman with everything she's got. Bo Gang screams in pain as she's hit squarely by the girl's massive and powerful blow. The attack destroys one of the buildings and sends several men flying with the force of the explosion. The young woman's fans celebrate her incredible strength while Xiaohui is carried by the Gu worm. The girl is shocked to see that she missed the attack and wonders how that's possible. The princess appears on a rooftop and says that with her oil, brute force won't work. She slips on her own oil and falls off the roof with a cry of surprise and pain. With that, she plummets from the tower and hits her head hard on the top of the building's roof. The blue-haired girl mocks her for being so careless, even knowing she was slippery. Xiaohui then wonders if the fall counts as their victory, and if the fight is finally over. But the princess says she lowered her guard on purpose, and that now it's time to use that move. With that, the woman transforms into a giant ball and launches a powerful purple energy beam. The attack hits the blue-haired young woman squarely and sends her flying with the force of the impact. Xiaohui is surprised to recognize the technique, and the Gu worm protects her from the attack with its body. The blue-haired girl then swears revenge for the loss of her servant and prepares to attack.